Hey guys, Super Rugby Pacific 2026 is finally back this weekend. That means the official fantasy competition is back too. In today's video, I'm going to break down the key things you need to understand, whether you're a beginner or returning from last year. A few things have changed, not a whole lot, but there is one really big change in particular. After that, I'll share some strategy and tips to help give you an edge over the rest of the pack. Anyway, let's dive straight into it. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that this isn't like other fantasy sports competitions where you get a limited amount of trades each week or for the season. In this competition, you get fully unlimited trades every single week. You could literally swap out your entire team and bring in a completely different group of players every single round if you wanted to. This does create a bit of a conundrum though. Because of that, there is no bench in this game. So if one of your players gets injured or pulled off the lineup right before kickoff, you're going to get 0 points for that slot. If you really want to maximize your score this year, you have to check for late changes to the lineup. Most teams post updates on social media. I use Facebook to check. Usually most teams are pretty good with that, especially the New Zealand Super Rugby sides. Other social media is probably fine too. I also try and put updates in a pinned comment on my videos each week, but definitely do your own homework before the whistle blows. If one of your players does get cut late, we do have a rolling lockout system in place for this competition. That means you can trade players out right up until their specific match starts. Now, the really big change that's new for 2026 that you need to know about is variable player pricing. Basically, player values will fluctuate every single week based on their performance in fantasy. If a player has a big game, their value is likely to go up. If they have a bad game, it is likely to go down. The key thing to understand though is the more expensive a player gets, the higher they have to score just to maintain their price. If an expensive player flops in one game, their value will tank a lot more than a budget players would in the same position. We don't know the exact formula they're using, but price changes are capped at $500,000 per round. We have 16 rounds in the season, so the most a values player could shift up or down before the last round would be 7.5 million. In reality, we'll most likely see the value changes a lot smaller than that, but it does depend on the formula quite a lot. And don't forget, you have 15 players in your squad each week, so that's 15 players that could move up and down up to $500,000. So there's a lot of potential here to really build up a lot of extra budget to help you through the season so you can buy more of the expensive players, but there's also more to lose as well. Now, the next big thing you really need to understand is how the scoring works in this competition. It's basically the same as last year as far as I can tell. The only major change I can see is that they've introduced scoring for 50-22s. You now get 10 points for that. It's a great change, but 50-22s, they don't happen often enough for them to really shift the needle on player selection. It is something to be aware of though. Otherwise, the main thing to understand with scoring in this competition is most of it revolves around scoring tries. You get a large amount of points for that, but there's also a lot of points for line breaks, line break assists, and try assists. And all of these tend to go hand in hand in try scoring plays. Like, you could get a line break assist, a line out, and then try assist and a try. It's all going to happen in that one scoring play, so you want to have the players that are involved with that process. The other thing as well is that outside of scoring, you don't get a lot of points or much else. You only get 1 point for a tackle, you only get 2 for an offload. There just isn't a lot of ways for players to accumulate a lot of points for you outside of these point scoring plays. And what this means is that the outside backs are usually your biggest weapons and probably demand the most consideration when considering your picks for any given weeks. They get the most tries and line breaks, and they have the highest score ceiling by far. But if their team is struggling or the ball just doesn't come their way, they can flop as well. So outside backs, they do have a real boom and bust type of dynamic. The guys that still score consistently well while also having the opportunity to get to that high score ceiling, guys like D-Mac or Will Jordan, they were your best bets last year. But this year they're very expensive, so there's an important choice to be made here around whether or not they're still worth it, because you'll have to make sacrifices in other positions to get them, at least until you're able to build your bank up. So my impression is probably yes, that they're still worth it, but we'll see what happens. Beyond the outside backs, 10s can be very strong as well. D-Mac was basically the MVP of last year's fantasy competition, but 10s here, they're actually not as strong as you might be used to if you've played other rugby fantasy competitions, just because they don't get as many points from the kicking duties here. D-Mac was also very strong because he got to spend a lot of time during the season at fullback, where he just got a lot more space to play his game. So 10 is a high priority position, but maybe not quite as much as you'd expect. They're still distant from the potential of the outside backs. 9, on the other hand, was a pretty dire position last year for fantasy. Everyone except Cam Roygar was pretty underwhelming for points. In general, the running and sniping halfbacks will do you the best in this position. Otherwise, it's a pretty low priority position where you can probably save a little bit of cash. Back row, on the other hand, they score pretty well because they also get a piece of the action with the try scoring and the line breaks, even if they don't have anywhere near the ceiling that the outside backs tend to. They get good exposure to points from turnovers, but fetchers still don't do as well as you might expect in this competition. The ball carrying back throw threats did tend to fare better overall last year. There was a couple of exceptions to this, like Carlo Tizzano here. You can see he's the most expensive back rower. That's just because he tends to get the ball at the back of the maul for the force, so he's taking up all those maul tries that a hooker would get otherwise, but he is still a very good player around the park as well. And speaking about hookers, they are actually a very strong position as well because they get those maul tries, but also they get to double dip on points that come from lineouts and points that come from scrums. So keep an eye out for the teams that do have strong mauls and which teams have a weak maul defense, because that can create a very good scoring opportunity for hooker selection when those teams come together in a matchup. Otherwise, hooker scoring is usually very solid and consistent due to the nature of getting that passive scoring through the lineouts and scrums. So even though these guys are good point scorers and a priority, you can actually get away with not spending a lot here just because of that passive point gain. Speaking about the props and locks as well, they were pretty weak last year relative to the other slots. They don't get to dip into each other's points like the hooker does, and they just don't get a lot of play in the open with those line breaks or necessarily get involved with those try scoring plays. So these positions, it's not expensive to pick up props or locks, but it's usually going to be a good place to save a bit of money as well, because the difference between an expensive proper lock and a cheap one, it's probably going to be single digit points at the end of the day. So don't sweat about these guys too much. Just stay away from the teams that have a poor line out. Don't pick your locks from there because you do lose points for flabbed line outs, and same for teams that have weak scrums as well. Don't pick your props from there just because if they're losing scrums, they're not going to be getting points for the scrums. And lastly, we have the midfielders as well. They were generally very weak last year, which did kind of surprise me. You'd think being backs, they have good exposure to try scoring plays, but I just think the way that the game is played now, they end up running sacrificial lines and defenses are so good that you can't get around having to utilize the edge most of the time. But there were a handful of gems in the midfield last year, Billy Proctor really tore it up when he came back from injury in the middle of the season, and I feel like it could be the same thing this year because we have guys coming back like Lester Fainga'anuku, Nani Laumapi, Suoli'i is still listed in the midfield, and Tavatava Nawai is finally getting listed as a midfielder this year. Last year he was listed as an outside back where he wasn't really competing, but this year I think he will be a strong option. So even though the category is weak, you only need to pick 2 of them, and yeah, it's probably not going to be hard to find someone good to be in there. But now that you know which positions to focus your resources on, let's talk a little bit about strategy. My general approach is to look at the fixtures for the week and try and identify where a lot of tries are going to be scored. Remember, fantasy scoring is very deeply tied to scoring tries. Could be a matchup that's going to be very open with 2 teams that just like to run the ball. Or it could be a matchup where one team is going to give a weak team a proper bollocking. In either case, I strongly tend to favor picking players who are on a team that will be scoring tries more freely over players in matchups where it could be a grind or it's going to be a tough battle. Even if the players in that tough matchup are generally better overall, I still kind of prefer to get guys that are in those free-flowing, free-scoring matchups. If all the matchups are tough, or if you don't have a good read on the fixtures, then it's okay to just fall back on those tried and true reliable players. Like you don't want to overthink things in this competition that can get you into trouble trying to get married to how these games are going to play out and where the points are going to get scored, right? It can be hard to predict. It was very hard to predict last year. It's hard to predict things at the start of the season as well when we don't have a lot of information, where the squads are new, coaching staff has changed, all that sort of thing. So stick to the tried and true if you're not certain. Remember, the best players are the ones who consistently will score a pretty solid base of points on a bad day, but on their good day they still have that really high ceiling potential. Those are the best types of players. You can't go wrong with those guys, but they do tend to be more expensive as well. So we will see how well we're able to utilize these players this year. The other important pillar of strategy this year will be building up your bank by buying players who are undervalued and subsequently increase in price and make you a profit. It's useful to do this early in the season so that you have more budget to play with as the season goes on, so that you can buy more of those expensive players at once when you really need them, when they're going to get you a lot of points. And when you want to use those boosters, you want to have some major firepower on board that you can afford when you put those boosters to use. Speaking of the boosters, if you're new to fantasy here, there are 3 effects that you can use once per season. They are mostly self-explanatory. Triple captain means your captain gives you triple points instead of double. Co-captain means you get 2 captains instead of 1. And limitless will mean that you get unlimited budget for 1 round. This was completely useless last year because it's very easy to buy all the players that you could possibly want. The budget basically wasn't a factor. Now that it is, this is going to be a massive strategic tool. Actually have a bit of a secret pro tip for using this limitless budget booster this year. I'm going to save that for a separate video though, so keep an eye out for that on my channel before you burn yours. You're probably going to want to use this one earlier rather than later, not in like round 1 or round 2, but earlier rather than later. Whereas with these other 2 boosters, you can kind of save them. There's always going to be a good matchup where there's a player that you really like who you think is going to go gangbusters, and that's when you utilize your triple captain and your co-captain boosters. Just in general, when picking your regular captain that you do every week, again, like I said earlier, your best players, they're generally the ones who on a bad day will still get a decent score, but on a good day they can, get that really high ceiling score. That's your D-Max, your Will Jordans. Usually you want to use it on an outside back The 10s are usually pretty solid like that as well. They usually get a pretty solid base of points because they have the kicking duties. But yeah, in my weekly videos, I'll always be putting forward good candidates for who to utilize as a captain. But that's the general rule of thumb. Look at your outside backs, look at your 10, maybe your hooker as well, especially if there's going to be a team that has a really strong offensive maul. That can be a good option sometimes. Anyway guys, that's the breakdown for the season. In my next video, I'll be going over the players, which ones are the best, as well as which ones are the bargains and could make you some money. I'll also be sharing my specific player picks for round 1 as well after the lineups come out. If you want to join my league, the link is in the description. I'll be doing reviews after every round and checking out what some of the top teams in our league are doing, as well as on the global leaderboards. Hit that subscribe button as well so that you don't miss my weekly videos. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one.